Ruto vs Uhuru, the political war is back. What does this mean for Kenya in 2027? Hello and welcome back to Home of Vibes and Updates. Kenya's political temperature is rising once again. President William Ruto and former President Uhuru Kenyatta are exchanging strong political messages, and the big question is whether this could shape the road to the 2027 general election. Ruto says Uhuru has chosen to remain active in opposition politics. Uhuru, on the other hand, says Kenyans have the constitutional right to choose whichever leaders they want. So, what exactly is happening between these two former political allies? And more importantly, could this confrontation change Kenya's political landscape ahead of 2027? Let's get into it. The Ruto-Uhuru political battle. President William Ruto has been speaking openly about his relationship with former President Uhuru Kenyatta. Ruto says that after becoming president, he reached out to Uhuru, hoping that the former president would support a broader national agenda. But according to Ruto, things did not go as he'd expected. Ruto now argues that Uhuru chose to remain involved in opposition politics rather than take up the role of a statesman.
My predecessor had an option, to become a statesman and rise above politics and, become a unifying, factor in a country. But he chose to climb down and become an opposition leader. Because in your own statement, your own headline, is the chairperson of Azimio up to now. Is the chairperson of party leader of, and he's busy with this. What you people wrote. He's busy organizing the opposition against me. Of course, I have tried to persuade him, because I thought, as my former boss, I tried to, persuade him that maybe he could play a different role. In fact, I remember when I was thinking, about how to take Kenya to the next level, I went and sat down with the former prime minister. And I told him, you see, we are now the elders, we are the leaders of this nation. Why don't we work together, grow a bigger vision for Kenya, that then, we can hand over to the next generation of leaders. And the former prime minister was I must say, I must give him credit. He was up to it. In fact, he immediately told me, look, I am going to look for Professor Hino. But I agreed with the former prime minister that it is important that we look for the former president. And I went out of my way. I looked for him. I went and saw him first in Ichaweri. I also came and saw him in his office here. And then I talked to him to persuade him that, look, as a former head of state, the only one living now, please help us to, forge, a new, vision for the country. But he was reluctant, and he said he wasn't sure he wanted to do that. Well, those are choices people make. So, of course, he chose to do what he's doing, organizing the opposition and sponsoring them. And even in your own, assessment, these people in the opposition, do they look that they have any idea of where they are going? In your estimation, can you explain how people who are supposed to be intelligent have no plan? They have no vision. They have no agenda. If you ask this one, he says, oh, I want to abolish Shah. Do you have an alternative? They cannot tell you. Another one there is saying, we want to abolish housing. We want these houses to be broken down, or maybe, I don't know.
And this is where the political temperature begins to rise. Because remember, these two leaders were once very close political allies. In 2013, William Ruto and Uhuru Kenyatta joined forces and successfully defeated their opponents. In 2017, they did it again.
In 2013, we faced a formidable opponent with a sitting prime minister and a sitting vice president running almost 3/4 of government. But today, we face a clueless, rudderless, leaderless, planless, disorganized opposition.
At the same time, President Ruto continues to seek support across the country as he prepares for another presidential contest. And now, several other leaders are positioning themselves for the future. The opposition question. This brings us to the opposition. Names such as Rigathi Gachagua, Kalonzo Musyoka, Fred Maishi, and other political figures continue to dominate discussions about the next presidential race.
His silence on the recent onslaught by his successor, President William Ruto. Kenyatta dismissing claims that he was bankrolling the opposition brigade in a bid to unsettle President Ruto's administration.
Mimi sitaki kuitwa sponsor bana, mimi sitaki mambo mingi. Mimi nimesema ya kwamba chaguo ni la nani? Chaguo ni la nani? Na hakuna haja ya kulazimisha Mkenya yeyote kwenda upande huu au upande huu. Wakenya watajichagulia wenyewe.
Kenyatta adding that he was not actively involved in politics as was alleged by President Ruto.
Na watu wasiseme ya kwamba yale ambaye nasema mimi naingilia siasa. Mimi sina haja na kiti yeyote. Tunaelewana? Mimi nashukuru Mungu kwa ile miaka amenipea kuwa kwa uongozi, na nawashukuru wa Kenya kwa kunipatia hiyo nafasi.
And turning to the latest wave of goon attacks in opposition rallies, Kenyatta warned the culture was shrinking the democratic space.
Hii mambo ya kuzuia wengine kufanya mikutano, ya kufanya nini ni kurudisha Kenya nyuma. Na tunataka kusonga mbele. We are a democratic society, and those democratic ideals were fought for hard by the man amongst others who we honor today.
The former head of state also called on the government to let the people exercise their freedom of choice on who they want to be president in next year's polls.
Wakisema wanataka Kalonzo ni Kalonzo. Wakisema wanataka Ruto ni Ruto. Wakisema wanataka Matiang'i ni Matiang'i. Wakisema wanataka Sifuna, Sifuna.
Kenyatta urged the opposition to remain united and have a single presidential candidate to face President Ruto at the ballot.
Unajua kila mtu anaweza kusema anataka, lakini Mungu anaamua ni mtu mmoja peke yake. Wakitaka mema, wajaribu kutafuta njia ya kuungana. Watembee pamoja na waheshimiane.
Emmanuel To, Citizen TV.
The big question is whether these leaders can work together, because if the opposition remains divided, President Ruto could have an advantage. But if they manage to form a strong and united political coalition, the 2027 contest could become much more competitive. And this is where Kenyan politics becomes very interesting. Politics has no permanent friends and no permanent enemies. Today's political opponent can become tomorrow's political partner, and today's political ally can become tomorrow's biggest critic. We have seen this happen many times in Kenya, the battle for political influence. But the Ruto Uhuru story is not only about two individuals, it is also about political influence. Who controls the political conversation? Who can mobilize voters? Who can bring different political groups together? And perhaps most importantly, who can convince Kenyans that they deserve their vote? That is where President Ruto faces his biggest political test.
2022 campaign.
The president's three-day tour of Mount Kenya was heavy on development messaging and political symbolism. In Nyeri County, President William Ruto commissioned and inspected several development projects, including affordable housing units, the Kenol Marua Dual Carriageway, the Nyamachaki Primary School tuition block, and the Marigiti Economic Stimulus Program market in Karatina. His allies argue the tour reaffirmed the government's development first agenda in the region.
The people of Mlima did not elect President William Ruto because they were told by Rigathi Gachagua. I think we need to speak the truth. The people of Mlima had already decided that they are going to elect President William Ruto before he chose his running mate. He chose Rigathi Gachagua 3 months before elections. But the people had already decided.
Indeed, unlike what they've been propagating, that the central region, the Mlima region, has been left out. We know that the Mlima region has not been left out. We've seen the number of projects. We've seen that the amount of money being injected in this region is quite enormous. And compared to other regions, we see that we have a major advantage, and that's why we continue supporting the government. That's why we continue supporting development. And we say that we leave politics until 2027.
Madera Member of Parliament Eric Wamumbi and Nyeri Senator Wahome Matinga have described the visit as successful.
You know, people thought that President cannot speak in this Karatina. He has come. People came out to cheer him. People came out to support him in the work he is doing, in the projects he is doing. So wewe unasema uko na 7 million votes. Ulisikia wapi wewe?
We are therefore very delighted that politically it is not as what other people thought, that the president will not be able to address the residents of Nyeri, that he will not be able to set his foot in Madera. Indeed, we saw the excitement with the crowd, and what the signal that has been clearly sent is that our people are not interested in political gimmicks.
While addressing residents, the head of state dismissed earlier claims by former Deputy President Rigathi Gachagua that he was the political bridge between President Ruto and Mount Kenya voters.
Unajua kuna majamaa wengine wanazunguka huku, sisi ndio tulibeba Ruto kwa mgongo tukalete hapa, sijui nini. Mimi nataka niwaulize watu wa Nyeri, urafiki hii tumetengeneza pamoja na nyinyi. Si mimi nilikuwa naibu wa rais wa Uhuru Kenyatta.
Political analyst Steve Nderi notes that any presidential visit, especially to a politically strategic region like Mount Kenya, inevitably carries political consequences.
What I believe, and when I heard him say that it was him who created a friendship with the people of Mount Kenya and not through Rigathi Gachagua, which is first of all very true. President Ruto was the one who came and wooed the people of Mount Kenya. By the time he was appointing Rigathi as a running mate, he had already made Mount Kenya his voting bloc. So what I believe is this is not just the final visit. It is one visit.
The challenge is not simply Uhuru Kenyatta. The challenge is whether different opposition groups can overcome their differences and unite around a common agenda. If they do, the political equation could change significantly. If they don't, the opposition could once again find itself divided. And when political parties divide, votes can also divide. Ndindi Nyoro enters the equation. Another name that cannot be ignored is Ndindi Nyoro. The Kiharu MP has recently taken a different political direction after leaving UDA and taking over the People's Party of Kenya. His move has generated considerable discussion, particularly around the future of MT Kenya politics.
Ndirauga ona nie kung'ang'ana ta arume aria angi na nikio muraiguire ona nie ndirauga tuguthie metha-ini na ndende nyoro guthie metha-ini na People's Party na ndirauga metha ĩrĩa tũrathiĩ rĩ, People's Party bũrũri mũgima, members othe a People's Party tũrauga nĩ twaingĩra thĩinĩ wa opposition ya kũng'oa Ruto. Nĩ mwanyitana? Nĩ mwanyita? Taugai People's Party. People's Party. Ndirauga atĩrĩrĩ, gũtirĩ mũndũ ũkauma na thome okia kwĩra mwanake nyita ũikarĩre haha, no nginya ona ithuĩ tũthiĩ gĩthaka o ta arũme arĩa angĩ. Na ndirauga wĩra ũyũ tũkĩruta o ũrĩa kwĩna andũ angĩ a munya na arĩa angĩ tũrauga one time ithuothe Ruto ainũke. Ndirauga ona ithuĩ rĩ, handũ ha gũthiĩ ũthoni tũikare hama-inĩ, tũgũthiĩ ũthoni tũikĩre keheri-inĩ. Hau hena ki. Ũndũ wa kerĩ, niĩ ndĩndĩte nyono ndĩrauga na kĩama gĩa People's Party tũrauga tũkĩrora mwaka ũyũ tũrorete wa gĩthurano, no nginya twĩtĩkanĩrie ithuothe tũrĩ thĩinĩ wa opposition tũnyitane moko tũkaruta candidate o ũmwe wa kũhũranĩra gĩturwa gĩa president. Nake president ũcio ũmwe tũkũruta nake agakorwo na running mate o ũmwe, nĩguo tũkorwo na timu ĩmwe, nĩguo tũgacinda Ruto na raundi ya mbere, ona ageria tũvipindi gũkorwo ndangĩhota. Na rĩu ndende nyoro ũrĩa ũrakirĩte ngwenda kũmwĩra rĩu ndĩĩria, na ndĩrokire kuongerera thibindi ya Ruto kũinũka Sugoi kilomita nĩ 10,000 kilometers per hour athiĩte. Nĩ tũiguithanĩirie? Ũndũ ũngĩ ngwenda mũnyite wega, niĩ ndĩrauga atĩrĩrĩ, twathiũrũrũkire twĩraga andũ atĩ bottom kĩ, rĩu mwĩambu kana mwĩ bottom? Mwĩ bottom harĩa mwarĩ kana bottom makĩria? Githĩ ona ti makĩria? Rĩu niĩ ngauga, na nĩkĩo ndĩrambĩte gũkira ngĩbanga maũndũ marĩa tũgwĩkĩra andũ a Kenya. Ngauga siasa nĩ njega na nĩ tũgũcihũra, no nginya tũkĩinũkagia Ruto tũkorwo na mũbango mwega wa nginya maica ma andũ a Kenya magacenjia mwaka ũkĩte. Na niĩ nĩ mũĩ ndirĩ wa kũyugithia kĩharũ nĩ haha, ciana cianyu imwe irathomera kĩharũ, tondũ kĩharũ gĩthomo kĩa ndĩ nĩ ciringi 500 o tamu. Niĩ ngauga tũnyitanĩte na atongoria othe a opposition, na nĩ ndĩmarutĩire wĩra ũcio na ngetha formula kuma January ya 2028 twĩtĩkĩre andũ othe arĩa marĩ thukuru thĩinĩ wa Kenya tũmahe gĩthomo kĩrĩa gĩtagwo basic education gĩtarĩ kĩa marĩhi kuma January ya 2028. Ũguo kĩharũ nĩ ciringi 500. Niĩ nĩ njĩkĩte formula bilioni 10 ciume CDF o ĩno tũmũheaga basarĩ, bilioni 10 ciume thĩinĩ wa county government tondũ no mũheanaga basarĩ, na tũcoke thirikari nene twambĩrĩirie na kũrenga mbeca cia State House iria irahũthĩka kũhaka andũ a Kenya, tũcerehũre bilioni 15 nĩ tondũ tũrabatara bilioni 35 gũtua gĩthomo gĩa Kenya gĩtuĩke gĩtarĩ kĩa marĩhi na ciana ikarĩa thukuru thĩinĩ wa thukuru citũ cia ndĩ. Gakĩra oye. Ũndũ ũrĩa ũngĩ ndĩrauga nĩ ũhoro wa ũgima wa mwĩrĩ. Ngauga famĩrĩ nyingĩ iratuo famĩrĩ mahututi na famĩrĩ ikahario rĩrĩa magĩa mũrwaru kwao mũciĩ, na mũno makĩria ndwari iria ciĩtagwo chronic. Niĩ ndĩrauga mbeca iria tũrĩhaga cia retire iria ciĩrĩga kuongerera andũ a Kenya tũcerehũre nuthu ya mbeca icio ciũke thĩinĩ wa ũgima wa mwĩrĩ, nĩguo famĩrĩ cia andũ a Kenya iria iragiĩka maũndũ-inĩ rĩrĩa magĩa mũrwaru.
Naoro is young, influential, and has repeatedly attracted attention whenever the future of Kenya's leadership is discussed. His political direction could therefore become an important part of the 2027 equation. But the question remains, where will Ndindi Nyoro stand when the major political alliances are finally formed? Will he remain close to President Ruto? Will he work with the opposition? Or will he attempt to create his own political path? For now, Kenyans can only watch. And that is what makes the coming months so interesting. What should Kenyans expect? We are likely to see more political meetings, more speeches, more accusations, more counter-accusations, and, most importantly, more political realignments. But Kenyans should remember one important thing. Political noise is not the same as political achievement. Politicians can hold rallies. They can make powerful speeches. They can attack each other. They can form alliances. But at the end of the day, it is the Kenyan voter who decides. And that voter is looking for more than political drama. Kenyans want jobs. They want affordable living. They want better healthcare. They want quality education. They want security. They want leaders who can address the challenges affecting ordinary families. That is why the 2027 election should not only be about who dislikes who. It should also be about what each political leader is offering Kenya. As another Swahili proverb says, Makagwajem si mpulima. Choosing the right tool does not automatically make someone a good farmer. In other words, Kenyans must look beyond political popularity and carefully judge the leadership on offer. What does this mean for 2027? So, what does the Ruto Uhuru confrontation mean for 2027? It tells us one thing very clearly. The political battle has already started. The alliances are being tested. Political camps are positioning themselves. Influential leaders are making strategic moves. And the search for the winning formula is already underway. But the biggest question remains unanswered. Will Uhuru become a major force in shaping the opposition's strategy? Will Ruto successfully defend his political base? Will empty Kenya remain behind the president? Will the opposition unite? And what role will emerging leaders such as Ndindi Nyoro play? These are questions that will become clearer as we move closer to 2027. For now, one thing is certain. Kenya's political chessboard is moving, and every move matters. The battle may not yet have officially begun, but the players are already positioning their pieces. So, what do you think? Is Uhuru genuinely preparing to influence the 2027 political contest? Or is President Ruto simply responding to growing political pressure? And where do you think MT Kenya will stand when Kenyans finally go to the ballot? Share your opinion in the comments. For more political updates, analysis, and breaking stories from Kenya, subscribe to Home of Vibes and Updates and turn on the notification bell. Thank you for watching. Stay informed, stay peaceful, and remember, the final decision belongs to the Kenyan people. Until next time, goodbye.